Hello, welcome to Clergy and Collars Getting Coffee. I am Leah Intwala, and today my guest is the Reverend Amy Loving Austin. Amy is the pastor of Bellona Presbyterian Church, as well as the Seneca number 9 Presbyterian Church. She is a graduate of Louisville Seminary. She is the stated clerk of the Presbytery of Geneva. And I feel like that's enough information.
There you go.
So welcome, Amy, to the show.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
It's awesome to be here.
Now, I'm not one to dance into the waters of questions, so
Right.
I'll just come and ask you.
Go for it.
Yes, what is an issue that you personally have been theologically wrestling with?
Ooh.
I know you wrestle with a lot.
I do.
yeah.
I do. One of the things I guess that I've been really sitting with for the last several years is really what does it really mean to love your neighbor?
Oof.
Right. And it's one of those things where, you know how they say you only have 3 sermons and all that.
I've heard that.
Right.
I feel like I maybe
And
don't have 3. I have 1.
Right.
But
I thought for a while there, then I was like, I definitely have 3. No, lately it's basically just a repeat of what I feel like Jesus's main sermon was, which was love God, love your neighbor. And I think also if there's a 3rd sermon in there, it's love yourself, which is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But the other 2 kind of are because we can't always, and you even mentioned this just a little bit ago to me in another conversation, that when you find those times when you can't really love yourself, to let God and let other people love you for you until you can love yourself, right?
That's the thing I said I tell my kids, right? I think I was mentioning that I tell my kids are they just are I don't really like this side of me. I don't really know that I'm very lovable or whatever. And I'm well, then you let me love you with all the love until you're able to love yourself again.
Yeah.
Which is why church happens in a community. It's why it's not individualized. God didn't save you. Right. God saved y'all.
It's all y'all. That's right. And it's that love your neighbor piece that I'm haunted by it because it's so important. And I feel as though every time we think we've finally figured it out, right? That something else comes up, and then you're like, oh, I'm not doing a spectacular job at that. And not just a personal thing, but we, the church, we are not necessarily doing a great job of that. And it's one of those things that really just keeps at me.
So when you find yourself then struggling to love God or your neighbor or yourself, what do you turn to? What do you do to I guess turn around, to use the religious language, to repent?
Right.
What do you do to sort of ground or remind yourself of that?
I think a lot of it is coming back to me with within scripture of kind of, okay, this is kind of silly, but I'm sure it's fine. I know back in the day, we all had the bracelets of the WWJD.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. I did not personally own one.
I had way too many of them. And
doesn't surprise me.
Right. I've had an interesting journey. But I actually think that as great as that is,
right,
I also feel as though maybe we should have ones that are WWTSD, which is not what would Taylor Swift do. Although I'm not necessarily completely opposed to that.
Yeah.
Also, but no, I'm thinking more of what would the sheep do? Ooh. Because I'm preaching on that
sheep
and the goats passage this Sunday.
Matthew 25.
But I've been really
big in the PCUSA right now.
And
it's big everywhere, but we're really initiating.
And I think we really need to go hard on this. Right? I'm not sure we're there yet, but I have faith and confidence that maybe we will. But what would the sheep do? Well, the sheep wouldn't be focused on, the sheep are not focused on what's the end result. The sheep are not focused on
now that's
like
a whole sermon, Amy.
That hopefully
their whole church is designed on the at the end.
And I'm like, I don't think that should be the motivation.
The judgment.
That's not the motivation. Right. The motivation is just simply, am I caring for and about those around me? And that's what the sheep do. And in the end, they're like, well, I didn't do anything special for you. And because they weren't focused on trying to do something for the right people, for the right person, for the right reason. They were just doing the right thing.
Right.
And I think too often, if our motivation is this kind of the end game of, if I can do X, Y, and Z, then God's going to love me enough and I'm going to get my fabulous shiny crown in the end. Like, I get it. That's a whole theology.
You can just have a shiny crown. I am all for shiny crowns.
For shiny crowns. But that's not there's nowhere in scripture that Jesus is like, here's what you need to do so that you can get all the prizes. And it's like, that's
in fact, there is the opposite,
that's
right?
Not the focus. And so we need to get over ourselves enough, so hard, to be able to really look at those around us and go, I just need to care about you because you were created. You are a created being just as much as I am a created being.
Ooh, but why is that so hard?
I think it's hard because we have our own personal beliefs and understandings of like how the world works and how it's supposed to go. And we have our own theology. And so theologies that maybe sort of kind of mesh with ours, we're a little bit more inclined to be like, well, okay, I guess we can kind of work with you, right? Like this is how I usually see interfaith working, right? Because it's like, it's interdenominational is its own monster anyway.
Right. Ecumenical work and interfaith work are very different.
And they're very different, and yet they're also very similar.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I don't think that we go far enough with our interfaith work. I know.
I'm not going to argue.
I don't think we go far enough
on
because
that.
I have yet to go to any kind of
little.
I have yet to go to an interfaith gathering where they have specifically invited anybody from any pagan traditions, any Wiccan traditions, any agnostic or atheist, humanistic traditions. It's like they'll invite the our universalist friends, that's yes, fantastic. That's a great step, but there's more. And it's not that and then this is not me saying like, because they are absolutely right. This is like, no, that's up to God. I'm going to just leave all of that.
No, you're speaking
to the divine, right?
Different.
But it's like, how do we start really having dialogue and conversations with the people around us that oftentimes have been burned by the church, sometimes literally,
as our pagan brothers and sisters, right?
But there's so many people that I have met that have been so burned by the Christian church and would never in a million years even consider coming back or having any kind of dialogue with the Christian faith because it's not worth their risk.
Right.
They've never really been even allowed to ask questions or have differences. I have a good friend of mine out in Illinois.
Okay.
No, it was a good friend of mine out in Illinois that simply had an allergy, could not have grape juice because of particular allergy that she had. already was like gluten intolerant, all of that, couldn't have bread. She's got a lot of health issues that she has to consider. Talked to her pastor, had grown up in a Christian church, talked to her pastor, I want to be able to be participating in communion. Can I have water instead of the grape juice? Because I'm allergic to the grape juice. I can't have that. It's going to cause major issues. And his response basically was, it's like, well, no, because your faith is just not strong enough. And if your faith was stronger, then you wouldn't have this allergic reaction. And obviously she left. And others
a little bit,
right, and others that she knew also left. And then like years later, we happened to meet in a completely different kind of a setting, and she finds out that I'm a pastor, and initially it's like, I don't know, and it was like, but I mean, thankfully, I guess she realizes like I'm not that kind of pastor, and I was absolutely mortified by this story that she shared. I was like, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. That's ridiculous. I am so sorry that that's your experience, because that's quite literally the exact opposite of what I think Jesus would have ever done in that kind of a situation.
Well, Jesus can just turn water into wine, right? Whenever.
Like Jesus has got this whole thing handled. Like he'd be like, not a problem. I got you. I've got. He could make that happen so that there wouldn't be, but that's not like some like, oh, I just didn't believe hard enough. It's like, no, Jesus would be like, absolutely, have some water. Like the point of communion is not the stuff. The point of communion is the community, the communing that we're doing. And I think we miss that with other people. And it's so hard because we grow up in these faith, those of us that have grown up in faith traditions, right? It's that kind of like, but this is the right way to do stuff. This is the one way to do stuff. And it's like,
and the right way means the way that you learned it.
Absolutely.
Right. That's normal.
That's normal. That's the way that it's supposed to be.
Normal is just what you know. Normal isn't actually.
Absolutely. It's not an act. It's a setting on a washing machine. It's not
a human setting.
It's not really a human setting. It's not even really a belief setting. I mean, right?
I mean, I think it's true. I think you've said a lot of really rich things. And some of that is that the notion of what's the purpose? Right. Is the purpose of communion to serve grape juice and bread? Now, I mean, because I think you share them, I don't want that wafer communion experience at all.
But it's
because
so
I want communion to be joyful and taste yummy.
Right.
And now this is not, I don't want it to taste yummy because I believe it's Jesus's body, right? Though there are people who do, and that's fine. I don't care.
That's
you do you. But if it is, then shouldn't it taste? Should it not stick to the roof of your mouth? I don't want to
those little styrofoam wafers are
right. But what you're saying is it's about the community, right?
Community.
And so if what you're doing prevents the community access or an individual in the community access to the table, can you imagine how differently the Bible would read? In fact, I'm gonna just gonna ask you to do this. Go do this in your your spare time.
Right.
Could you imagine what the Bible would look like if you took away all the people who ask questions of Jesus? If you took out all the stories, where Jesus was asked questions, because you said that too, right? The access to the communion table, the idea that people weren't even allowed to ask questions, that we don't encourage questions in our faith tradition. That are really, I mean, this is one of those like parenting skills, right? Well, this is one of the parenting skills I actually maybe possess, which is the ability to answer only the question my child has asked me. Right. Without getting into the weeds necessarily, but just ask the question and not be like, well, that's an inappropriate question. It's an unacceptable question. Sometimes the response is, I don't really have a good answer for that.
And I think that's a great answer.
But
sometimes it's necessary in all settings.
Right. But
Absolutely.
but can you imagine how different the Bible itself would be and what stories we draw on? Like if Nicodemus comes to Jesus and Jesus like, I don't take questions. Oh, ye of little faith.
Oh, ye of little faith. Yeah.
Because it's also, that part was interesting to me in what you said, is like, have more faith and then these things. And I was like, Jesus only ever used faith to talk about how it's made somebody well.
Yeah.
Like, our faith has made you
Mhm.
well, not if only you had more faith, then you wouldn't even have this thing.
Right.
That's,
And
you
see,
have
and
this thing, and the reason, you know, and your faith has made you well, not you have this thing and that's a sign that means God's already rejected. I don't understand that.
And it's interesting because when you think about it, the vast majority of times that Jesus is talking to someone about the faith that they have, it's because they have come to him either actually speaking questions or coming to him with that kind of question. Maybe they're only thinking it. Maybe they're actually, you know, like the woman reaching out to touch his clothes. She doesn't say anything initially, but she's like, maybe, just maybe, if all I do is just touch his clothes.
And he's like, what?
Right. But you know, it's
somebody
that
changed my energy.
Right. But it's that the faithful ones are the ones that are daring to ask, that are daring to wonder, that are questioning things.
Right. You know, like the paralytic man, it wasn't his faith so much as it was the faith of the friends who literally tore off the roof and lowered him down. That they're like, oh, you've got to heal our friend. Our friend has to see you. Yeah. And so it wasn't the paralytic man's faith, it was the faith of the community that embraced him, that said, if you can't love yourself, then let the other people love you. Correct. That's, and I just got goosebumps. It's that kind of energy that I wish that we were putting more of out into the world as the church. Right? Because I mean, that's the kind of energy that can really start to move some major mountains. You know, when we are really willing to put ourselves out there enough to really dare to love those people that maybe we even question whether or not they're lovable. But that we go, but you know what? Maybe they don't have anybody that's showing them love. Well, somebody needs to. Right. And if we're supposed to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the here and now, then we got work to do. Right. And that's it's gonna take a lot of our putting our egos aside and our saying, well, but I don't agree with this about you, or I don't agree about that about you. And it's like, none of that matters to Jesus right now. Right? Yeah. The sheep, the goats, they are all together. And the sheep are not supposed to be trying to sort everybody. The goats are not supposed to be trying to sort everybody. Somebody else is going to be doing all of that kind of stuff whenever that time comes, which is not determined by us. And we don't even know if we're sheep or we're goats. No. I think we're both. It just depends on the day and the hour. Right? But yes, that if our focus is simply on loving those people that are around us, you know, that's the kind of stuff that really becomes world changing. Yeah. And life changing. Yeah. And not just in our own little tiny spheres of influence within our denominations and our churches and our smaller communities. We could make a huge impact, more than what we are already doing in various kinds of ways. But there's so much more. Well, and it's just that easy and it's just that hard. I say. Yeah. I think what you're talking about too is like, there's also a contagious part. Yeah. And I realize I say that knowing what we've all learned about what it is to be contagious. But at the same, new meaning now. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I do think so. there are certain apps or things or places like that I won't engage with.
Right.
Because they feel toxic.
Yep. Absolutely.
Like, and I was like, I think toxic environments are one that it's not it's when.
It's good to have boundaries.
Right. And so there are certain things that I have that I choose not to engage in, or certain fights or arguments, church arguments or otherwise, right? That I'm just like, because I think when push comes to shove, sometimes people will choose a side, and sometimes there isn't necessarily a side to choose, or you go, I will support you in this battle, but in this battle, my job is to go cook the food for when you come back from your fight. And I'm just gonna make the bed and cook the food. I'm gonna do this so that you're cared for when you're done, so that you can rest or fight again. But like, I'm not going to actively battle this one, right? And I think that's okay. I think, to know where those boundaries are. But at the same time, that toxicity can be contagious. I also think what you're talking about, like the love, the gratitude, the generosity, that those things can also be contagious.
Absolutely.
When you were talking, it just reminded me of something I read. Did I read it recently? I don't know. Who knows when I read things? Sometimes my timeline is,
I get it,
questionable.
Oh yeah.
But it was just reading a story about how they have, I want to say it's the Danish, because I always think it's the Dutch who do things. Danish and Dutch are not the same things. No. That was an error. I'm talking about the Danish in this case, I think, and not the Dutch. I've been reading a lot about Dutch Reformed theology, and like I'm embracing those things. So sorry to all the Danish and the Dutch who are watching. I believe it's in Denmark, where the Danish people are, not in the Netherlands where the Dutch people are. That they have, like, you can go to the library and like check out a person.
Yes.
Is it okay? Now you're
I think you're right.
That it is the Danish.
I think it's in Denmark.
The happiest country. It's gotten the happiness ratings.
It does have like crazy happiness ratings. It's
like,
awesome.
Gotten happiness scores. Whoever those people are have ranked that stuff. And we won't get into why that might be, or the theories. I won't theorize on that. But one of the things is, like, so you can basically not like go rent a person outside. This is inside of the library, that there are people who are signed up to kind of tell their story. Like, so tell their story, talk about whatever,
various subjects, all that kind of,
right. So that you can basically check out to spend time with a particular story person that you want to hear. And I think it's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, can you imagine, which is kind of the same thing with like the drag story time that's happening. I realize that gets into a whole world to talk, it's hard. I'm finding it really hard to love my neighbors who say that drag is unacceptable.
No kidding.
I'm finding it really hard personally.
Yep.
But at the same time, like I think there's a lot of benefit to that idea that you can hear a story, because when we hear each other's stories, and it's huge. Not about deciding who's in and who's out, because we hear people's stories all the time,
right?
But if you feel like you're in a position to determine whether that story is acceptable or not, it's very different than coming to a space and saying, I'm just here to listen. I'm just here to learn. And the reason they do this is, data tells us it increases our empathy, our compassion, our generosity, which then helps us to be less toxic, and more open, to loving people. So we could start that ministry.
I mean, I think that's an awesome potential ministry for sure. Because it's that, again, you're building community in a different kind of way. It's so important. I mean, one of those things we learned certainly in these last couple of years is, yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can have community. And I have some very like solid, deep community relationships with people that are completely online. I've never met these people in person. And yet I know that it's like, we will go to bat for each other, all, no question.
Right.
But yet there's also that piece of, I need to be able to actually see an actual person and have this kind of an interaction. And there's only so much that you can do on video and online and things like that. So being able to have opportunities to hear stories from, and like personal testimonies, right? From individuals that maybe you would have never heard from or even thought to have a conversation with, but you're able to literally like go to the library and be like, I would like to talk to somebody who has experience with this. And they'd be like, look it up. Oh yeah, you can come in on this day, or there happen to be right here today.
Right.
And have that conversation. That's
yes.
Yeah.
No, because there is like, right, there are a lot of really rich stories. Everybody I know
everybody has
a story worth hearing.
And even those people who come from those places that we do not understand at all.
Correct.
And might really disagree with, right? They also have stories to learn from, if nothing else, to learn maybe a little bit more of why they are the way they are right now. And it's in listening to someone else's story that then invites that possibility for them to then want to maybe listen to some of your story, to have a conversation. And that's how that can start. And so it starts with somebody going, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about this thing that happened to you. Tell me about your experience with such and such. Those kinds of opportunities to actually then really get to know somebody else in a different kind of a way, and not just on that superficial, like, I've seen what you do, I see how you act, I see these various things, because it really is that kind of, proverbial don't judge a book by its cover. Sometimes what's going on the outside, the presenting issue, right?
Multiple times.
All the time. Well, we do all the time. And there's reasons why we do those kinds of things, right? That are, self-preserving and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
you're adding a layer.
Right. But it's also at the same time, it's like, when you are in a position where you are in a safe place, you are able to be having a different kind of a conversation, to be willing to have that conversation, or at least invite that different conversation.
Well, you're
can change things. And maybe your conversation is not going to be the thing that's going to just like change everything.
Right.
It could be that conversation changes you. It could be that just plants a seed, and that maybe they're more willing to have a conversation with somebody else, or that you're more willing to have a conversation with somebody else, right? Because we have to remember, we're part of this too. It's like, we can't go walking into these situations thinking it's like, I got this, right? Because the minute that you start walking in, again, I'm sermonizing, here as I'm working on the sermon of that, as soon as you start thinking, I got this, I'm one of the sheep, you're not. As soon as you think that, then then you're not actually doing the thing that you thought you were going to be doing.
Right. That's true. So, okay. So what's interesting too is like, what you're talking about, it has ancient roots, right? But like meditation practices, the holy act of resistance, and what you're speaking of is that thing, like going, okay, why am I resisting this person? And instead of just kicking them out, it's inviting it in for long enough that you can understand what isn't in you. that's rejecting, and then do you want to? Because I found like the more things I invite in to become aware as to why they are, right, the better I am able to handle them. So like being aware of, let's say, my triggers,
right,
only makes me better able to like keep them, right, to handle them when they come, because it's gonna come.
Oh yeah,
right,
absolutely.
that like tension, that resistance, that desire to repel or whatever, but like pushing it down, right, pushing the emotion down or the person out or whatever has never served a good purpose of wholeness,
right,
and well-being, right. It tends to work the opposite direction.
Pushing things under the rug only makes for like a really lumpy carpeting area, and it's just not, it doesn't actually,
right, because these things don't go away.
Things don't go away. They're still there, whether we want to deal with them in that moment or not. And it doesn't mean that every single moment is this, time that we have to always deal with it, like right now. Kind of a thing. It's like sometimes it's recognizing those boundaries for yourself, right? Of going, this is not the right time for me to be dealing with this. This is not the right space. This is not the right place, the right time. I'm not in the right headspace. But being able to recognize that it's like, let me put a pin in that. I might need to come back to that at some point, because clearly this is something that I want to think about, or something when you recognize something about yourself, or you recognize something in somebody else and you're going, whoa, why is that feeling really weird to me, or really intriguing to me, or whatever it is, right? Like, okay, cool, I'm going to come back to that at some point when it's right, but recognizing that for yourself.
Right. And things like using vocabulary like this is normal, this is whatever, obviously can affect one's actualization. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Self-actualization, sure.
But like those sort of things affect when you're like, this is the only way that one can be this thing. This is what it means to be a Christian. This is what it means to be
this is the model,
woman.
and that's
this is what it means to be this or that. And so anything outside of it, like as though everything can just be categorized and separated. And sometimes you're like, look, that's green because it's yellow and blue. So if I want to put it in, so I'm going to put it with the blues today and the yellows tomorrow. And so some ways the language for me that has been helpful, like in my personal life, is to think of these things as like my better demons and my better angels. I often categorize them like that. And sometimes they're better because they're not mediocre. Like they're really good. Like they're really good at what they do. They're the better ones. The mediocre ones didn't make it through childhood.
No.
The better demons and the better angels are the ones who like stuck it out.
Right.
They are well versed in all my subconscious. Right. More even than I am.
They've gone through all the classes, all the certification programs.
Better.
Top notch.
Talk about golden crown. Right. Here's your crown.
They've all got a gold star.
They all have gold stars.
Yes.
Right. But sometimes you go, I see you, better demon. And I don't have time to deal with you right now. So we're just gonna, I see you, because if I just pretend I don't see it,
no,
it's just gonna get louder. It's gonna keep
it's gonna be the kid when you're on the and you're on the phone. Or in my case, it's going to be my cat that's going to be, I'm trying to be on a Zoom call or something. And then all of a sudden it's just like, nope, here comes Aurora. And she wants in on all the action. And it's like, you might as well acknowledge it.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you have to deal with the issue right then.
Right.
But you're way better off acknowledging it. Yep, absolutely.
Well, do you remember that Zoom thing that happened where the guy accidentally put the cat filter on his face?
Yes.
And like he's in court and he kept being like, I'm not a cat.
I'm not a cat.
Yes.
We're
We're
very aware.
like, could you imagine if everybody just pretended that isn't happening? I mean, he couldn't fix it. He, for some reason,
God bless. I mean, that.
Oh my gosh, that's priceless.
Guy. Yeah.
But like the not acknowledging it at all would have been worse.
Would have been way worse. Would have been way worse. Now, I mean, it was priceless. I love the fact that he was like wanting to not just clarify, like, this is a cat filter. But then I am not a cat was the one that just really killed me with that whole thing. But yeah, it's that. Why does it really laugh? Because it's so hysterical. Hard. And it's but it's that kind of, but that's kind of what you're saying though. It's like, otherwise you're gonna be going in there with the cat filter and just being, I'm gonna try to pretend that everything is completely normal. And it's like everybody else is like, what?
And there are times, right, when better angels are at work. Mm-hmm. And so like part of our role as pastors is moderating certain things.
Yep.
And there are times where there's like a fight or an issue and it's over, let's just say carpet color.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Paint color, carpet color, whatever. And like people are fighting it out to the point of like, we're going to leave.
Yeah. Right.
And you're like, pause. Are we really fighting over the color of the carpet, or is there
really going on there?
So, but like few of us have training, right, or the feel like we have the authority, or and I would say that, right, that sense of inner authority that you go, wait, pause, time out. Right. Is there something else going on? Maybe we are just fighting about the carpet, but let's know that we're actually fighting about the carpet.
Let's acknowledge what's happening.
And not like so-and-so and so-and-so who have never gotten along. Because sometimes we just don't get along. Yeah. But how do we not get along with people and still respect them?
Yeah. How do you do that?
Because I personally am not somebody who thinks respect is earned. I think that's like the basic. That's generosity.
Base level. Yeah,
absolutely. That to me is generosity. Until you tell me it's about me, I'm going to assume that ridiculous reaction is all your own stuff, unless you tell me it's because of my stuff. But you have to tell me, because I'm not going to default to like that anymore. At the same time, I'm like, if it's really about the carpets, let it be about the carpets, and we'll battle it out. Majority rules on this one, right? FYI, and then it's done. Can we agree that when the game's over, it's over. It's over, and it stays here, and doesn't, go out into all the metaverse, right? But
sometimes it's, that might be. Right in the some of the clinical language, that's the presenting issue. But what's actually going on? Yeah, might be something completely different. And so it's worth it always in all of those kinds of situations, I think, to ask those questions, yourself, certainly, to kind of check your own perception of the situation. But like you said, too, it's like if you're in that position where you can go, hold on, time out. Let's just take a moment to just kind of clarify where we're at. This is what we're talking about. Is this really what's going on? Or, and sometimes naming that, and putting it out there that it's like, maybe this isn't really actually about the carpet color. Maybe there's something else that needs to be talked about here. That's, again, it's another invitation to invite somebody to then speak up and go, well, yeah, because I'm really upset that somebody said something else. And so, I'm being able to recognize that in themselves, to be able to say, oh yeah, this is actually something that this is the baggage I'm bringing to this party.
Yes. But do you feel like in your own, so that feels like something I've grown into, like the more I've learned how to love myself, right, and authentically be me, and to take myself out of like, this is what it means to be a pastor. This is what it means to be a woman. This is what it means to be a wife or a mother. Like those things. I mean, I get this with my son sometimes. They're like, why can't you be more like this mom on TV? And I was like, because that's fake.
right, because that's scripted.
That's a character.
Right.
Right. That might be an idealized version of what a mom is, but that's like a mom who's scripted to not have any triggers.
Right.
I don't.
Or to at least have comical ones, right?
Right. If they have them,
they're
really funny,
they're really funny,
never gonna hurt anybody.
Right.
Never,
Absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I know like nobody's writing this for us, but there was a lot of work to go, okay, I'm a woman and I feel like a woman and I am one, and I'm one even if I lost this thing that only women have, right? I'm a woman even if I don't have children. I'm a woman even if I don't wear my hair long. I'm a woman even if I don't wear dresses. Then I realized, but I'm a woman who likes to wear dresses. I also don't, but when I'm like, I see, right, that dresses are fabulous. I like them for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
So if I were to see a guy in a dress, it doesn't bother me because I was like, you know what I know.
Yeah. They understand.
You possess the knowledge that I possess.
They get it too. Absolutely.
And it's less about like, that's an inappropriate way to be man, and more like, hey, you're part of, you get it. You get the beauty.
You get the understanding
that I like.
Clothing.
But like, right. But like, I'm not going to force that upon and be like, this is the only way to be a woman.
Right.
Women are only those people who wear whatever. Cause it's like, who am I? But do you feel like you've grown into that? Like, I'll ask you, like, do you feel like there was a time like you're currently wearing, and I happen to know that your glasses change.
Yes.
She has these crazy, well, it's not crazy.
No,
she has these glasses that you flip out, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't personally flip out. The glasses flip out.
Sometimes I do, but
but like you can put on another mask. It's like swatches.
Yeah, it's kind of like the swatch watch of glasses. It totally is.
Right.
Yeah.
So based on your mood.
Pair eyewear. They're awesome. I love
there
them.
You go.
We're not sponsored, but
we can always be sponsored.
There you go.
And like my glasses, right, are ones I never would have chosen 20 years ago. Because
there's no way I would have.
There's no way I would have.
No way.
Right. But I grew into it and went, no, you know what? This is what I like.
Yeah.
I like a pattern. I like a color. I like a whatever. Yeah. And it's okay to do that and still be seen as professional. Yeah. Whatever that means. So how did you do that?
Oh my gosh, that's a constant growth thing, I think.
A growth thing.
It's a growth thing. It's like that's a growing edge. Yeah, I think initially, I mean, I initially came from a far more conservative upbringing in terms of like just theological, very focus on the family, a lot of that, very, very 80s. And all of, and as I started to really read my Bible and really start to dig in and ask questions, which in some cases was, I remember being told, why are you asking questions? You're not supposed to ask questions. And I was like, but people ask Jesus questions all the time. And so I just got to asking questions. See, right? And but as I started to, I guess, kind of just get more comfortable with being able to ask some of those kinds of questions, then I started asking my own, kind of digging into my own sense of self and being like, am I being really true to who I feel that I really am, like who I really am, and how I want to express myself, and what that looks like, what it sounds like, what what I'm, from what I'm wearing, what my hair is like, what my, what kinds of earrings am I going to wear? What kind of glasses am I going to put on?
Right.
All of those kinds of things. What is the outer matching the inner? And asking yourself, it's like, who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for me, or am I trying to live up to what I think is somebody else's expectation? And not just like what I know that somebody else's expectation is. And I think, and there's a tiny little difference between the two, right?
Yes. Thin lines, thin veil.
Very thin veil there. And while it's good to know like what expectations there are when you're going into any kind of situation, at the same time, it's also important, thank you, therapy. It's really good for you to know kind of what your own needs are and how you fit into that whole situation that you're walking into. And so if you're able to then be comfortable in your own skin, which is, I think, a constant, everyday, all the time kind of process, that is a constant, everyday thing. But then also how you fit into the community and what that looks like and how that works. That's a constant, ongoing process. So I mean, I was very, I would say I was a lot more reserved, probably growing up.
But it was like, I've seen you in social circles. You still can dig, you can still dig into that.
I'm a hardcore introvert. Yeah. When it comes to, but at the same time, Myers-Briggs, I'm actually a perfect split.
Oh,
I'm actually a perfect split Myers-Briggs, introvert, extrovert. And so a lot of it is kind of that social standard. Like, it's one thing for you and I talking, we talk all the time.
Correct.
We see each other professionally and in the community and everything. I'm comfortable with you.
Right.
That's one thing. Somebody that I've just met, and all that, they're not necessarily going to probably be able to pull the same kinds of things out of me that you are.
Right. Because we've known each other for like a decade.
We've known each other, which is insane and crazy and awesome. And but we've gained that trust with one another, and we know each other. We're able to be comfortable in growing around each other as well, right?
Yeah, right.
Which is because, like, I'm not the same Amy that you met 10 years ago.
Correct.
I would like to think that I'm a slightly better version of myself, because I'm hoping that
if you've grown,
I've grown, that I'm actually getting better.
Better angels
and
are
I'm better. My better angels are winning. But yeah, it's a constant process, and I've learned for myself now that I'm kind of like, it's okay to wear the crazy frames on my glasses sometimes. I mean, like, I'm not going to wear leopard print glasses to a funeral that I might be conducting, unless they were specifically requested by somebody, because they were like, oh yeah, grandma really loved, this, that, or whatever. Like, I've definitely, done those kinds of things. And I know that I have colleagues that would just cringe at, requests that I have probably said yes to, for weddings, funerals, different kinds of things like that, like music choices. People be like, you played Adele at a funeral? I'd be like, yes, because that was really important to the family for various reasons. And it becomes a sacred thing. Now, do I usually have conversations about like appropriate language that might be in a particular song or some kind of a thing? I'm like, yeah, sometimes those kinds of requests are better served at like the luncheon afterwards, or at the reception for the wedding or whatever. But it's, if I'm supposed to be able to be expressing myself, and I'm hoping that other people are actually trying to be their authentic selves, then I think that translates to other things as well.
Yeah, because well, there were a lot of thoughts that just raced through my head right there, and I was unable to articulate a sentence or a question or anything. But also, like, I know that you also spend a great deal of time honoring those places, activities, those things that do help you feel like you're growing more authentically into who you are, right? So like your jewelry you're wearing right now, you beaded all this.
I did all of the ones that I'm wearing today are ones that I did actually.
Amy is quite an artist, and
that's generous.
I am generous.
Generosity is good,
but it's true. Like, it's one of these things that, like, you're very creative. It's very much a way that you, I would say, experience the Holy Spirit. And there might be times that creativity didn't branch itself out into all places. It was just like this hobby.
Oh yeah.
Versus
for sure.
like that it was a hobby that then you then shared with other people or expressed in other ways. But I would say like you see it now, you can see it in the way that you state clerk, you clerk the state. You see it in the way that you like do other things. Like it's definitely present in the pulpit and the ministries and the work that you do. But also like it also pushes the people around you in healthy ways, it's not in harmful ways, like, but to push the boundaries just a little bit, to be like, I'm going to talk and tell you the story that you're really familiar with, but instead of preaching a sermon, when we finish reading this, what I've done is interpreted as a wholeness, health, and healing activity that we're going to do afterwards.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that would have been done 12 years ago.
Oh, no. When I first got started in ministry, which is now almost, oh golly, it'll be 18 years this next year. Or this year. Yeah, when I first got started in ministry, I don't think I really thought a whole lot about doing things that were a little outside the norm, in terms of how we experience the holy and the divine, and how we connect to God in those ways. But as I've continued in ministry and grown in ministry, and listened to others as well, I think I've come to grips with that much more, with the reality that we don't all learn the same. We don't all experience things the exact same. And, and so there's a lot to be said for sitting in a pew on a Sunday morning, wearing, particular styles of clothing and sitting very quietly with your hands folded and, stand up, sit down, and, attempt to sing or whatever it, might be. That's great.
You don't attempt to sing.
You're
not a very good singer.
Oh, I definitely sing. But
yes.
I get that that's also not everybody's thing.
Correct.
But we assume that it needs to be sometimes. And which is I feel bad sometimes for some of my parishioners when I foist a new hymn on them, but whatever, they're used to it. They're used to it.
Fact. And sometimes I go, poof, that did not go well.
No, well, there is that.
We tried that. Good job.
But well, it's only new, like really the first couple of times that you're doing it, and then after a while, it's like, oh, we've done this before. And I think that's kind of the way that some of my worship tendencies now have been. I think people in my churches have kind of come to understand that sometimes Amy will show up with a bag full of who knows what on a particular Sunday, and they just see that it's like, I'm carrying in something, and they're like, oh, it's going to be one of those Sundays. Cool. Wonder what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And so it could be that we're, pulling out star words, or it could be that we're all going to have cross necklaces for Lent. But sometimes it's not just like tangible stuff.
Right.
Sometimes it's more experiential, of having a service of healing and wholeness, or doing a blessing of the animals, or doing a particular kind of contemplative prayer practice that typically we don't necessarily think of for a Sunday morning, but sometimes the text just kind of calls for that, or paying attention to what the needs are in the community, too. Is sometimes you realize, you look around, you're like, we're all exhausted, and we are all really tired, and we are all in need of just some quiet reflection. And so it's okay to do that, and giving ourselves permission to not just only ever do the same thing that we've always ever done, because sometimes that's not actually the best way to connect. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. And it's not always the easiest thing to receive either, because I know that there, we've got, I've got parishioners too that are like, it's not really church unless I've done this. And I get that. But there's also people that are like, I didn't really experience church until I tried this other thing.
Correct.
And so it's finding that balance for ourselves, but also then for the people that we serve.
So
Yeah.
before I get to my final question, as you already know what it is.
I know what it is.
You are
I'm
so
prepared
looking
as
forward
I
to it.
can be for it. Yes.
But it's interesting to me, like in this theme or thread, and I often try to find themes or threads and things. It sounds to me as you were talking there that as you've done more work on unboxing yourself,
Yeah,
and sitting with other people and allowing them like that same process, giving that same permission granting to happen, to like do something where it's like not about you being comfortable or anybody being comfortable, but being comforted, right? That line.
Yep.
It also then has unboxed God, though.
Yeah.
Like it's also expanded
Oh yeah.
the definition of who God is, what form or shape God can take, what experiences one can have with God. So
Absolutely.
so I think that's amazing. It's amazing work. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 18 years of ministry
For sure
is going to look like. And with that, I want to ask the final question.
Oh boy.
Of the Care Bears, right? Now we have extensive conversations and are even planning a Care Bear spiritual gift workshop.
Yes.
And because you're just like this much younger than I am, a little bit more than that. She's like this much younger than I am. And
it's just a number.
Just a number. Not really. It's a blessing. Getting older is a blessing. I'm not gonna laugh in God's face.
No,
with this
absolutely not. I have earned every single one of these gray hairs.
I'm looking forward to mine might be buried in here. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm really looking forward to turning. I really want it to go white.
Yeah.
But we don't get to choose it.
No, mine thankfully is as it's nice. Coming in. Thank God. Thank you, Nona. I'm taken after Nona and Emma Mama and all that. I know it follows that whole family line and everything else, but yeah, Nona had salt and pepper, but
went white. She had the cool white,
just cool streak
before it all went, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait.
Yes, I've had that, but I've mostly
shaved it off.
But at some point it'll go white enough that I'll be able to dye it, crazy colors without having to do much of anything.
Oh, without having to strip, because you have dark hair.
I have dark hair.
I have
otherwise,
hair, right? But I just don't like to dye my hair.
I don't, and I've done it before. I will eventually do it again.
We have digressed extensively.
We have, but that is normal for us.
True, but also in the color,
it does come back
which
though.
The Care Bears are right. The Care Bears are colorful, and indeed. And so, Amy, if you were a Care Bear, if you were not personified, they're not people. If you were embodied as a Care Bear,
right.
Language matters. Then what color Care Bear would you be, and what emblem is on your belly that you are projecting as pure love out into this metaverse? So I'm sorry, with my kids, I can no longer use universe because they're like, is it
right? Yeah.
Is it one, Mama?
Right.
They watch too much Marvel.
It's too much Marvel. I get it.
As though there's
right. I'd be purple. Some shade of purple, probably similar to the purple that we used as one of the colors for our wedding. So kind of a nice plummy kind of purple. I've been really thinking about what symbol I would have on my belly. And so I think one of the gifts that I think I bring, or that I'd like to bring, at least to the party, is kind of that nurturing, caring spirit of, really looking out for those around me. And so the first thing that I thought of initially was like a little first aid kit. But the more I thought about it, I kind of want to redesign the first aid kit. So I think the symbol, which is very creative. This is very like, yeah. So what I think I would want to have is it would be a first aid kit essentially, with like the cross, with like a little medical cross on it. But the container itself would not be kind of like the standard like little plastic or whatever square box.
It would be far more ecological than that.
No, well, it could be, because I'm guessing it's probably made from reclaimed fabric. Because what I'm envisioning is something that's a lot more like Mary Poppins carpet bag.
Oh, her tote little,
like her awesome bag, right? That like she can just reach in and she can pull out exactly what is needed.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be able to bring to the party.
Yeah.
And if it's not necessarily like, if I would want to be able to be, reach into that bag and pull out exactly what's actually needed, which is different sometimes than what's wanted. Right?
That's a whole other hour.
Which is a whole other thing, right? But it's what's needed. And so I think it would be kind of like Mary Poppins carpet bag, maybe with a little cross on it. I got to embellish it somehow.
Well, for sure, it has to have embellishment.
I'm not sure it would be bedazzled, but it would definitely have some beadwork on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know that I see you as a bedazzler, but you accessorize.
It would accessorize
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no like lack of.
My Care Bear probably is wearing a bracelet.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I mean, but that's great. That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I would love to be able to like look at people's Care Bears and go, oh, that is clearly Amy.
Right.
I want that embodiment for everybody.
Right.
But I certainly thank you for this time. This has been
lovely.
Fantastic. And I hope we've helped you sermonize a bit.
I think so.
You've also been able to dig into that a little bit more, which is a lot about how we meet to process. I mean, we do that often so that we can process scripture or policies or, ministry and mission and whatever it is. It is a gift, and you are a gift. And thank you for sharing that with us today.
You are a gift too. Thank you so much.